Heaven I too, it's Abla. So today I want to speak about trauma responses and trauma bonding, how we respond to coming out of the system and alternative ways of living, how those are actually trauma responses within the conscious community, woke community. Um, Basically, certain methods of alternative living must not be seen as an end all be all. We need to realize that these are all steps in the process. So, I saw a post online that said homeschooling is a trauma response. And I was like, homeschooling is a trauma response. Obviously, within Sigod, we want to homeschool. We want to teach our own children. Children are not to be put into a public education system, things of that nature. So, obviously, me, even before moving onto the Gatinet, wanted to and still want to homeschool my children, my seeds. So I saw this post and I was like, homeschool is a trauma response. How is that? And then the more I think about it, it's true. It's not homeschool itself, teaching your children yourself, your seeds being taught within the home. It's not intrinsically a trauma response. It is the isolation of it all. It's the isolation factor. So things like homeschool, home birth, free birth, depending on the setting and who that female has around in her birth, that can also be a trauma response. So also things that are responses to the isolation that we create when we decide to live a certain alternate lifestyle, such as, like I said, homeschooling, home birth, free birth. Some couples choose to not even have children. That decision to not have any seeds is a response to that isolation. So it's like a trauma response. Sisterhood, the extreme fragility and sensitivity within sisterhood, thinking it has to be all butterflies and rainbows. Pretty much spirituality, thinking spirituality has to be all butterflies and rainbows. These are all trauma responses to pretty much being chosen or called. It's like those persons in the woke conscious community, those of us choosing to answer the call and choose a better path than the world, choosing to leave the world. We somehow become isolated because obviously spiritually, mentally, we are in one place, and physically, we might be in another place. The world is ending, but it's still in process. So if I look around, the world seems to still be upheld. Everyone is living in their homes with their electricity and going to the grocery store and this and the third. So me wanting to be separate from this and isolating from this, I don't want my children to go and be a part of the world that the other children are a part of. So it seems that seeds that are chosen as well, they are then isolated. It's really the isolation factor that we who are called, chosen, sent, we then have to do things like homeschool, home birth. Certain persons choose not to even have children. Not saying any of this is wrong, but what I'm saying is that we need to realize these are trauma responses, and the woke community glorifies things like this. We glorify homeschooling, home birth, and things like that, but that's not what we truly are yearning for and desire for. It's not that I want to isolate my children. It's not that this woman wants to give birth with no other females around. It's what needs to be done. And what must be done, that is done. It is a trauma response to choosing the better path. It's not an easy path. It's a hard decision to make, and it's a harder path. So we do not need to glorify these things like homeschool and home birth and things of that nature, what we need to do is focus on returning to the root. Yeah, these things do not need to be glorified because they're not the solution. It is a step in the process. So we need to be present in those moments while we are homeschooling. Oh my gosh, this bluebird. No, be present and realize that this is a step in the process. Be grateful that we are going through the process, and know that there is a goal, and that goal is community. Community is the answer. No one should be feeling forced to not have seeds, to give birth in an isolated environment, have their children isolated from other social interaction, because yes, social interaction is a part of child development. It's necessary. So we shouldn't have to do those things. We should focus on community. That's why community is so important. That's why obviously See Gold, we know community is important. Being linked with love-minded persons is so important. Otherwise, we're just going to be creating trauma bonding. This path is not to be walked alone. What is the purpose of answering the call if it's not going to fulfill the highest I's will on earth, if it's not going to multiply? What is the purpose if it's not going to continue? So the point of this that I want to say is that we cannot get caught up and think that we have solved everything because we homeschool our children, or we do home births and things of that nature, or decide not to have children because we need to focus on community. That is how we will fulfill and become mirrors and continue to mirror the highest I's will on earth. We need to stop trauma bonding and focus on these little steps. It's like levels of a game, pretty much, when you answer the call. There's different levels and there's different steps and goals. And we need to make sure that in this step of isolation, where, like I said, I want to be separate from the world. So maybe my family and I, we might be so-called isolated from so-called community, which is not real community because it's worldly community, worldly persons who are not really our love-minded family. It's not our community anyway. So this phase of isolation, righteous isolation from the world, but we need to keep in mind that the goal is community. And we need to heal through these moments of isolation. This is for healing. This is for strengthening. That is the purpose of this. Strengthening of ourselves, strengthening our seeds, so that in the future and when the video game is over and we don't have to go through these levels or these phases anymore, that was the point of this video. I saw that post that homeschool is a trauma response, and started making me think of things like home birth and, birthing in isolation. Even though I do know some tribes, the women actually do birth in isolation with maybe one other woman around, like their mother or grandmother. However, like I said, us who are choosing to live an alternative lifestyle outside of the world, we face this isolation, and we can do certain things within this isolation that we might think is the answer, but it's not really the answer. It's a trauma response. It's a response to taking the harder path, and that response is not the answer. We need to focus on the bigger picture, which is linking with love-minded community, which is having that community then be a mirror of the highest I's will on earth. So yeah, that's what I really want to talk about today. I hope this is understood. This is not to condemn this phase. Like I said, be present and joyful in this phase, not to condemn. Community is the answer. That's the purpose of community, is to bring forth the will of the highest I on earth. So yeah, so really we shouldn't get caught up in these trauma responses, and we don't need to trauma bond within these periods of illusionary isolation, which are just a part of the process. Yeah, like I said, link with love-minded persons. That's the goal, and of course that's what we're doing at Seagoat. So yeah, that's what I want to talk about today. I hope everyone has a blissful day. God, I feel like cry. I